Sarah Chen's breath fogged the inside of her helmet as she drifted through the derelict space station's central corridor. The beam from her suit lamp cut through decades of floating debris, illuminating twisted metal and frozen crystals that sparkled like diamond dust. After 3 years of mapping abandoned outposts at the edge of known space, she'd grown accustomed to the eerie silence of these forgotten places. But something about this station felt different. Her scanner chirped, detecting an energy signature she'd never seen before. "That's impossible," she muttered, tapping the device. According to her readings, something in this 100-year-old wreck was still drawing power. The Academic Council had stripped her credentials and banned her from every respectable research facility in the United Systems after she'd published her controversial theories about pre-human civilizations. Now she made a meager living selling salvage maps to scrappers, searching these graveyards of human ambition for anything worth recycling. But this reading could change everything. She pushed off a wall, propelling herself deeper into the station. The energy signature grew stronger as she approached what her old schematics identified as the research wing. Most of these frontier stations had been hastily abandoned during the collapse, their crews evacuating with whatever they could carry as humanity's empire crumbled under its own weight. The door to the main laboratory had been sealed shut, its control panel dark and lifeless. Sarah pulled out her plasma torch, the blue flame casting dancing shadows as she cut through the ancient lock mechanism. With a final push, the door groaned open, revealing a vast circular chamber. Her suit lamp swept across rows of dead monitors and empty specimen containers until it caught something that made her heart skip. In the center of the room, suspended in a containment field that somehow still functioned, was a device unlike anything she'd ever seen. It was roughly spherical, about the size of a human head, its surface covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. "Central, are you getting this?" she asked, activating her suit's recording system. Only static answered. The station's hull must be blocking her signal. She'd have to document this herself. As she approached the device, her scanner's readings went haywire. The energy signature wasn't coming from the containment field. It was emanating from the object itself. She checked her suit's radiation sensors. Nothing dangerous, but the readings were unlike any known energy pattern in her database. Sarah's hands trembled as she examined the control panel for the containment field. If she was right, if this was what she thought it was, it could validate everything she'd lost her career defending. But one wrong move could destroy what might be the greatest archaeological find in human history. The panel's display flickered to life at her touch, ancient systems responding to modern commands. The containment field shimmered and disappeared. The device remained suspended for a moment, as if held up by an invisible hand, before gently floating down. Sarah reached out, her gloved fingers inches from its surface. The pattern seemed to respond to her presence, swirling more rapidly. Every scientific instinct told her to wait, to set up proper containment protocols, to call for backup. But she knew the moment she reported this, it would be confiscated by the same authorities who had ruined her career. Her fingers brushed the surface. The device was warm to the touch, even through her suit's insulation. The patterns froze, then began to pulse with a soft blue light. A holographic display burst to life around her, filling the chamber with swirling symbols and diagrams that her translator couldn't begin to decipher. "Hello, Seeker," a voice echoed in her mind, bypassing her suit's audio systems entirely. "You are the first to find us in 47,283 local solar cycles." Sarah jerked back, but the voice continued, gentle yet powerful. "Do not be afraid. We are the Sentinel, created by those you would call the ancestors. We have waited long for one who could understand." What are you?" Sarah managed to ask, her scientific training warring with her instinct to run. "We are a key, a warning, and a hope," the voice replied. "The universe faces a threat that nearly destroyed our creators. They scattered us across space, waiting for species capable of understanding and using what we know. Your kind has finally reached that threshold. The holographic displays shifted, showing images that made Sarah's blood run cold. Space itself tearing apart, entire solar systems disappearing into what looked like quantum foam. The barrier between dimensions grows thin, the Sentinel continued. What you call space-time begins to fray. Our creators found a way to repair it, but they vanished before they could complete their work. Now that task falls to you. Sarah laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Me? I'm a discredited researcher who can barely afford fuel for her ship. I'm not exactly humanity's best hope. You are exactly what is needed, the Sentinel replied. Your mind is open to possibilities others refuse to see. You understand that the universe is vaster and stranger than your people imagine. And most importantly, you are here. The holograms coalesced into a single image, a map of sorts, showing points of light scattered across the galaxy. There are others like us, waiting to be found. Each contains a piece of the knowledge needed. But we must hurry. The barrier weakens faster than predicted. If it fails completely, all reality in this region of space will collapse. Sarah's mind raced. She had no reason to trust this thing, this impossible artifact that spoke directly into her thoughts. It could be a trap, a hallucination, or simply a malfunctioning piece of ancient technology. But if it was real, if she was right about the ancestors, how long do we have? She asked. At current degradation rates, approximately 1 standard solar year before the damage becomes irreversible. Less than 5 before total collapse begins. Sarah took a deep breath. She thought about her tiny salvage ship, her dwindling accounts, her ruined reputation. She thought about all the academics who had mocked her theories, all the institutions that had closed their doors to her. Then she thought about the end of everything, the death of not just humanity, but all life in this sector of space. Tell me what you need me to do. The patterns on the Sentinel's surface pulsed brighter. First, we must find others who will listen. Your people's authorities will try to seize us, to study us until it is too late. We need those who can act without permission, who can think beyond the boundaries of their training. I might know some people, Sarah said, already mentally reviewing her contacts from her academic days. Brilliant researchers who, like her, had been pushed to the margins for questioning established theories. But we'll need resources, ships, equipment. The ancestors left more than knowledge, the Sentinel replied. There are caches of their technology hidden throughout this sector. Together, we can find them. But Sarah Chen, you must understand. Once we begin, there is no turning back. Those who guard your society's boundaries will see you as a threat. Some will try to stop us. Others will try to use us. The path ahead is dangerous. Sarah looked around the abandoned laboratory, at the ruins of humanity's last great expansion. She thought about all the papers she'd written about the cyclical nature of civilizations, how species either adapted to new paradigms or perished. Now she was being offered the chance to prove every theory she'd ever proposed, and save humanity in the process. I've already lost everything once, she said, reaching for the Sentinel. I've got nothing left to lose. The device rose to meet her hands, its surface warm and alive. You are wrong about that, Sarah Chen, it said as she secured it in her sample bag. You have everything to lose. All of existence has everything to lose. That is why we must succeed. The laboratory's emergency lights suddenly flared to life, and a distant alarm began to wail. Sarah's suit computer detected multiple ships dropping out of FTL at the edge of the system. Your activity has been noticed, the Sentinel observed. Corporate salvage monitors patrol these sectors regularly. Then we better get moving, Sarah said, pushing off toward the door. I hope you're ready for a crash course in human ingenuity. As she raced back through the station's corridors, the Sentinel's presence hummed in her mind, ancient knowledge meeting human determination. The adventure was just beginning, and the fate of reality itself hung in the balance. Sarah's salvage ship, the Wayfarer, shuddered as she pushed its engines beyond their rated capacity. The vessel was little more than a retrofitted mining shuttle, but right now it was the only thing standing between her and a corporate salvage team that would have no qualms about shooting her down to claim their prize. The Sentinel pulsed softly in its makeshift cradle beside her pilot's seat, its shifting patterns casting rippling shadows across the cockpit. Your vessel's propulsion system is operating at 137% of design thrust capacity, it observed. This significantly increases the probability of catastrophic engine failure. Tell me something I don't know, Sarah muttered, her eyes fixed on the sensor display. 3 Chimera-class interceptors were gaining on her, their superior engines eating up the distance. They were Nova Corp ships, the kind that usually hunted down illegal salvage operations. Someone had noticed her discovery and called in the heavy hitters. Very well, the Sentinel replied. The third ship in pursuit has a slight fluctuation in its port gravitational stabilizer. A properly timed burst of electromagnetic radiation could potentially. Wait, you can detect that. Sarah's hands flew across the controls, bringing up the Wayfarer's detailed sensor readings. Can you interface with my ship's systems? Limited integration is possible, though your technology is primitive by comparison to our creators. Sarah smiled for the first time since their escape began. Primitive doesn't mean useless. Can you help me modify my mining laser's emission frequency? The Sentinel's surface rippled with increased activity. Ah, I understand your intention. Yes, this is possible. Though I should note that such an action would violate at least 7 interstellar salvage regulations. Add it to my tab, Sarah said, her fingers dancing across the control panel. The Sentinel's knowledge flowed into her mind, guiding her adjustments with mathematical precision. Her mining laser had been designed to cut through asteroids, not to disable starships, but with the right modifications. The pursuing ships were almost in weapons range when Sarah spun the Wayfarer in a maneuver that would have torn apart a larger vessel. Her modified mining laser fired, sending out a precise burst of energy that caught the lead interceptor stabilizers at exactly the right frequency. The ship lurched, its artificial gravity systems momentarily confused, sending it into a spiral that forced its wingmates to break formation. Now that's what I call primitive ingenuity, Sarah said, pushing her advantage and diving toward a dense asteroid field. Think you can help me plot a course through this mess? We calculate 17 viable routes with survival probabilities above 60%. Give me the craziest one. The next 10 minutes were a blur of precision flying, with Sarah threading the Wayfarer through gaps barely wider than her ship, while the Sentinel fed calculations directly into her mind. The corporate ships fell behind, unwilling or unable to match her desperate maneuvers. When they finally emerged on the other side of the asteroid field, Sarah allowed herself to breathe again. We need to find somewhere to lay low, she said. I know a place, an old research outpost in the Helios cluster. It's been abandoned since the collapse, but some of the equipment might still work. The Helios cluster contains significant background radiation that will help mask our energy signature, the Sentinel agreed. But Sarah Chin, we cannot hide indefinitely. The barrier continues to weaken. We estimate that the first visible effects will manifest within 3 standard months. Sarah nodded, plotting a course that would hopefully throw off any long-range scanners. What exactly are we going to see when that happens? The Sentinel projected a holographic simulation in the cockpit. Sarah watched in horror as space itself seemed to develop tears, like fabric being pulled apart. The first signs will be subtle. Quantum fluctuations, localized temporal anomalies. But as the damage spreads, entire regions of space will become unstable. Ships will disappear mid-flight. Planets will experience time at different rates. Eventually, the very laws of physics will begin to break down. And your creators found a way to stop this. They developed a network of quantum stabilizers, powered by energy drawn from multiple dimensions. But the network was never completed. The final calculations, the activation sequences, they were divided among units like myself and scattered across space when the ancestors realized they were running out of time. Sarah frowned. running out of time. What happened to them? The Sentinel was silent for a moment, its patterns swirling slower. We do not know. Our last records indicate they were close to completing the network when all communications ceased. We were left with our final instructions. Wait for another species to reach sufficient technological understanding, then help them complete what was begun. And you think humanity is ready for this? We can barely keep our own civilization from falling apart. The collapse proved that. Your species is young, yes, prone to conflict and division. But you also possess remarkable adaptability and creativity. Your solution with the mining laser demonstrated this. The ancestors believed that the species best suited to face this crisis would not be the most advanced, but the most innovative. Sarah laughed. So humanity's saving grace is that we're too primitive to overthink things. In essence, yes, your technology may be less advanced, but your minds are surprisingly capable of conceptual leaps that more established species might miss. You see possibilities where others see only established rules. The ship's computer chimed, indicating they were approaching the jump point for the Helios cluster. Sarah began the calculations for the faster-than-light jump. But the Sentinel interrupted. Wait, we detect an anomaly in the local space-time fabric. A jump at this exact location could be problematic. Sarah checked her instruments. I'm not seeing anything. Your sensors are not calibrated to detect quantum instabilities. Allow us to assist. New information flooded Sarah's mind. Complex mathematical models that made her head spin. But among the equations, she saw it. A subtle distortion in space itself, like a ripple in clear water. The barrier is already weakening faster than we calculated, the Sentinel said. We must accelerate our timeline. Sarah adjusted their course, aiming for a different jump point. The outpost in the Helios cluster has some advanced quantum scanning equipment, if we can get it working again. But we're going to need help. I can't pilot the ship, analyze data, and evade corporate thugs all at the same time. You have someone in mind. Sarah thought of Dr. Marcus Rivera, her old colleague from the academy. He'd been the only one who hadn't completely dismissed her theories about the ancestors. Last she'd heard, he was working at a private research facility on Europa, probably the only place that would hire him after he supported her papers. Yeah, I know someone, but extracting him won't be easy, and that's assuming he believes us about the whole reality falling apart thing. The evidence will soon be undeniable, the Sentinel replied. The question is whether anyone will be prepared to act when it becomes visible to all. The ship's engines hummed as they prepared for the jump. Sarah thought about all the people who had called her crazy, who had dismissed her theories about advanced ancient civilizations. Soon, they would all learn the truth, but would it be in time? One more thing, she said as the jump drive spooled up. Those corporate ships, they found us awfully quickly. Someone had to tip them off. We need to figure out who else knows about you, and what they want. Agreed. But first, we must focus on survival. Nova Corp is not known for abandoning profitable pursuits easily. Sarah grinned. Then I guess we'll have to get unprofitable real quick. The stars stretched into lines as the Wayfarer jumped, carrying humanity's best hope into an uncertain future. Europa's surface was a maze of ice canyons and frozen methane lakes, but the real action happened below. Sarah stared through the Wayfarer's viewport at the massive research complex carved into the moon's subsurface ice layer. Quantum Research Institute's private facility was a fortress of science, funded by corporations who preferred their breakthrough discoveries to come with patents attached. This seems unnecessarily complicated, the Sentinel observed as Sarah suited up. Dr. Rivera's talents are wasted in this facility. Why not simply contact him directly? Sarah checked the seals on her environmental suit. Because QRI monitors all communications in and out, the moment we try to reach him, they'll know something's up. And right now, we need to stay off everyone's radar. Your species has an interesting relationship with knowledge, the Sentinel said. You simultaneously seek it and restrict it. Yeah, We're complicated like that. Sarah finished her preparations and pulled up the facility schematics she'd obtained through less than legal channels. The good news is that Marcus always works late in the quantum physics lab. The bad news is that getting there requires passing through about 12 layers of security. We may have a solution. The Sentinel's surface rippled with increased activity. Your suit's systems are primitive but adaptable. We can modify them to generate a localized quantum field that should render you effectively invisible to most scanning technologies. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Most. The human visual spectrum will be unaffected. You will need to avoid direct observation. Right. Because that would be too easy. Sarah secured the Sentinel in her pack, ready to go for a walk. The journey from the hidden landing site to the facility's maintenance airlock was tense but uneventful. The Sentinel's modifications worked perfectly. None of the perimeter sensors seemed to notice as Sarah bypassed them. The airlock itself proved more challenging, but a combination of Sarah's salvage expertise and the Sentinel's quantum mechanics knowledge got them inside. The facility's interior was a stark contrast to the frozen wasteland outside. Pristine white corridors branched in every direction, interrupted only by security checkpoints and laboratory entrances. Sarah moved carefully, using the Sentinel's enhanced awareness to avoid patrol routes and security cameras. They were halfway to the quantum physics lab when everything went wrong. The corridor lights suddenly flickered, and Sarah felt a strange sensation, like reality itself was stretching. The Sentinel pulsed urgently in her pack. Quantum instability detected, it announced. The barrier is experiencing a localized failure. Before Sarah could respond, she watched in horror as a section of the corridor ahead began to distort. The white walls seemed to fold in on themselves, creating impossible geometries. A security guard walking through the area froze mid-step, then seemed to move backward before returning to normal, completely unaware of what had happened. "That's not supposed to be visible yet," Sarah whispered. "You said we had months." The degradation is accelerating faster than projected. This facility's quantum research may be inadvertently weakening the local space-time fabric. An alarm began to blare, but it wasn't for them. Scientists and security personnel rushed past their hidden alcove, heading toward the disturbance. Sarah saw her opportunity. They'll be distracted by the anomaly. This is our chance. The quantum physics lab was exactly where the schematics said it would be. Sarah found Dr. Marcus Rivera right where she expected, hunched over a complex array of instruments, oblivious to the chaos in the corridors outside. He'd aged since she'd last seen him, his dark hair now streaked with gray, but his intense focus was unchanged. "Your quantum field variance calculations are off by a factor of 10, Sarah said, deactivating the Sentinel's cloaking effect. Marcus spun around, his eyes widening in recognition. "Sarah, what the hell are you?" He stopped as he noticed the strange device she was pulling from her pack. "What is that?" "Remember all those papers we wrote about pre-human civilizations? Turns out we were right. More importantly, we were right about the quantum instabilities too. Though I didn't expect them to start manifesting quite so dramatically." The Sentinel floated from Sarah's hands, its surface patterns casting dancing lights across the laboratory equipment. "Dr. Marcus Rivera," it said, causing Marcus to stumble backward. "Your research into quantum field dynamics approaches a fundamental understanding of the barrier's nature. This is most impressive for your species' current technological level." Marcus looked from the Sentinel to Sarah and back. "It's speaking directly into my mind." That's impossible with current technology." "Current human technology," Sarah corrected. "But we don't have time for a full explanation. You saw what just happened in the corridor. The universe is literally coming apart at the seams, and we need your help to stop it." "My help?" "Sarah, I'm a theoretical physicist working on corporate research projects. What could I possibly?" Another tremor shook the facility. This time, Sarah watched as equations and formulae began appearing in the air, hanging like ghostly writing before fading away. "The quantum barrier continues to degrade," the Sentinel announced. This facility's experiments are creating a feedback loop that accelerates the effect. Dr. Rivera, your current research unknowingly approaches the same solutions our creators discovered. With our guidance, you could help complete their work. Marcus ran his hands through his gray-streaked hair, his scientific curiosity warring with his caution. This is insane. Even if what you're saying is true, QRI owns all my research. I can't just walk away. Actually, you can, Sarah said, pulling up a data feed on her suit's display. Because in about 10 minutes, this facility is going to experience a cascading quantum event that will force an evacuation. Nothing dangerous, she added quickly, seeing his expression. The Sentinel can contain it, but it will give us the cover we need to get out of here. And then what? Then we find the others like me, the Sentinel said. We locate the remaining quantum stabilizers, and we save your reality from collapse. Marcus looked at his laboratory, at the years of careful research and controlled experiments. Then he looked at the equations still shimmering in the air, proof that everything he thought he knew about quantum physics was just the surface of a much deeper reality. I'll need my data cores, he said finally, and my personal quantum scanner. If we're really going to do this, we'll need equipment that can detect and measure these anomalies. Sarah grinned. Now you're thinking like a proper outlaw scientist. As they quickly gathered the essential equipment, the facility's lights flickered again. The Sentinel's surface patterns accelerated. The quantum cascade begins. We must hurry. Marcus finished downloading his research data. Just one more thing I need to know, he said, looking at the Sentinel. Why us? Why humanity? Surely there are more advanced species out there. Advanced technology does not equal advanced understanding, the Sentinel replied. Your species possesses something rare, the ability to take imaginative leaps, to see patterns where others see only chaos. You call it human intuition. We call it the key to survival. The evacuation alarms began to sound as reality itself seemed to hiccup around them. Sarah checked her escape route on her heads-up display. Time to go, unless you want to stick around and explain to QRI's board why their facility is experiencing impossible quantum phenomena. Marcus took one last look at his laboratory, then nodded. Lead the way. Though I have to warn you, my practical experience with daring escapes is purely theoretical. Don't worry, Sarah said as they hurried toward the emergency exit. Between human intuition and ancient alien wisdom, we'll figure it out. We have to. Behind them, the quantum cascade began in earnest, sending ripples through space-time that would leave QRI scientists baffled for years to come. But by then, Sarah hoped, they would have either saved the universe or failed so completely that it wouldn't matter anymore. The Wayfarer's cockpit had never been designed for 3 occupants, especially when one of them was a floating sphere of ancient alien technology that kept projecting holographic star charts across every available surface. Marcus sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by salvaged quantum sensors and data tablets, his fingers moving rapidly as he correlated the Sentinel's data with his own research. The patterns are incredible, he muttered, more to himself than to Sarah at the helm. The quantum instabilities aren't random. They're following a mathematical progression that perfectly matches my theoretical models. If you had known, QRI would have buried your research even deeper, Sarah said, adjusting their course through an increasingly unstable region of space. The sensors showed gravity waves rippling where they shouldn't, twisting normal space into dangerous knots. Corporate science isn't about discovery, it's about patents. Your species' compartmentalization of knowledge is highly inefficient, the Sentinel observed. The ancestors shared all discoveries freely, understanding that survival depends on collective advancement. Yeah, well, the ancestors also vanished without a trace, so maybe they weren't entirely. Sarah's retort was cut short as the ship suddenly lurched, alarms blaring. Quantum wake detected, the Sentinel announced. A significant temporal distortion approaches. Through the viewport, they watched as space itself seemed to fold, creating a rippling curtain of distorted stars that stretched for thousands of kilometers. Inside the distortion, time appeared to be flowing at different rates. Sarah could see debris from old ships caught in the effect, some moving in slow motion, others accelerating until they were merely blurs. The barrier's degradation is accelerating exponentially, Marcus said, checking his instruments. These temporal effects shouldn't be visible for months, but the collapse is catalyzing itself. Each breach makes the next one more likely. We need to find the other stabilizers, Sarah said, carefully plotting a course around the distortion. Sentinel, how many are we looking for? 7 units were scattered across this sector of space. Each contains crucial data needed to recreate and improve upon the ancestors' quantum stabilization network. But we must hurry. The coordinates we possess will become meaningless as local spacetime continues to degrade. A new alarm sounded. Proximity warning. Sarah checked the long-range sensors and cursed. We've got company. 3 ships just dropped out of FTL behind us. Nova Corp's persistent, I'll give them that. Their pursuit is illogical, the Sentinel said. The quantum distortions make travel increasingly hazardous. They risk their own destruction. They think we have valuable alien tech they can sell, Sarah replied, pushing the Wayfarer's engines harder. They're not wrong, but they don't understand what's really at stake. Marcus looked up from his calculations. Wait, I have an idea. The temporal distortion. We could use it. Use it? Those things tear ships apart. Not if we understand how they work. Marcus pulled up the Sentinel's data on his tablet. The distortions follow predictable patterns, even if they look chaotic. With the Sentinel's help, we could calculate a safe trajectory through the effect. The corporate ships wouldn't be able to follow. Sarah looked at the rippling curtain of warped spacetime. That's insane. Even if we could plot a course, the ship wasn't designed to handle those kinds of stresses. The Wayfarer's structural integrity can be temporarily enhanced, the Sentinel offered. We can generate a localized quantum field similar to what we use to avoid detection at the research facility. It would help protect against the worst temporal effects. The corporate ships were gaining, their superior engines eating up the distance. Soon they'd be in weapons range. Sarah had pulled off some crazy stunts in her time, but flying through a temporal distortion was on another level. If we get this wrong, we don't just die, she warned. We could end up scattered across different time streams or compressed into quantum singularities. Marcus managed a grim smile. At least we'd be making fascinating contributions to physics. Your species' ability to find humor in dire situations is remarkable, the Sentinel commented. But we must decide quickly. The corporate vessels approach weapons range. Sarah took a deep breath. All right, let's do it. Marcus, feed those calculations to my navigation system. Sentinel, do whatever you need to do to keep us in one piece. The next few minutes were a symphony of coordinated effort. Marcus called out trajectory adjustments while the Sentinel's energy field enveloped the ship in a protective cocoon. Sarah's hands flew across the controls, making micro-adjustments as they approached the distortion. Impact in 10 seconds, Marcus announced. Once we're inside, conventional physics become optional. We'll need to rely on the Sentinel's quantum measurements to navigate. Optional physics, Sarah muttered. Great. The Wayfarer hit the temporal barrier like a stone hitting water. Reality seemed to stretch and twist around them. Sarah watched in fascination and horror as her own hands appeared to move both faster and slower than her brain told her they should. Warning lights flashed at impossible speeds, then froze in mid-flicker. Maintaining quantum cohesion, the Sentinel reported, its usual calm voice taking on a strained quality. Local temporal variance exceeding safe parameters. Adjust course 3 degrees port. Through the chaos, Sarah saw the corporate ships attempt to follow them into the distortion. Without the Sentinel's protection, they were immediately caught in competing time streams. One ship seemed to age decades in seconds, its hull crumbling to dust. Another split into multiple temporal copies of itself, each following a different possible path, until they collided with each other in a spectacular explosion that happened both instantly and in slow motion. "Exit point approaching," Marcus called out, his voice distorting strangely. "But there's something else. These readings, Sarah, look." As they emerged from the temporal distortion, they found themselves in a region of space that shouldn't exist. Countless fragments of reality hung suspended in the void. Pieces of planets, frozen moments of long-dead stars, even sections of space itself that had been torn free from the normal universe. "By all that's logical," Marcus whispered, "it's a quantum graveyard. Everything that's been lost to temporal distortions, it all ends up here." The Sentinel's surface patterns shifted rapidly. "This confirms our worst fears. The barrier's collapse is not merely a future threat. It has already begun. These fragments are echoes of futures and pasts that have been severed from the primary timeline." Sarah stared at the impossible scene before them. Can we fix this? Put it all back?" "Unknown," the Sentinel admitted. "But these fragments may serve a purpose. Among them, we detect traces of ancestor technology. It is possible that other stabilizer units have been trapped here. So we either find them and save the universe," Marcus said, "or we join this collection of lost moments." Sarah checked their ship's systems. The journey through the temporal distortion had taken its toll, but they were still flying. "Then we better get searching. How do we start?" "We can calibrate your sensors to detect quantum signatures matching our own," the Sentinel said. "But be warned, this region exists outside normal spacetime. Navigation will be challenging." "Story of my life," Sarah replied, guiding the wayfarer deeper into the quantum graveyard. Around them, fragments of lost reality drifted like cosmic debris, each one a reminder of what would happen to their own universe if they failed. But as she watched Marcus excitedly analyze the impossible physics surrounding them, and felt the Sentinel's ancient wisdom guiding their way, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. Maybe humanity wasn't the most advanced species in the galaxy, but they were here, facing the impossible with nothing but determination and creativity. Sometimes she was beginning to believe. That was enough. The quantum graveyard stretched endlessly before them, a maze of broken realities and lost moments. The wayfarer threaded its way through the debris field, its sensors straining to detect traces of ancestor technology among the cosmic wreckage. They had already recovered 3 stabilizer units, each one containing crucial pieces of the puzzle they needed to solve. "Energy signature detected," Marcus announced from his makeshift science station. "Similar quantum frequency to our friend here, but there's something different about this one." The Sentinel's pattern swirled with increased activity. "We confirm. This signal contains signs of active temporal manipulation. Caution is advised." Sarah guided the ship closer to the source of the reading. Through the viewport, they could see a pocket of distorted spacetime, within which floated what appeared to be an entire research station, perfectly preserved. "That's impossible," Sarah breathed. "That's the Cronus station. It disappeared during the collapse. The whole facility just vanished one day, with over 300 scientists aboard." "Not vanished," the Sentinel corrected. "Displaced. The station's quantum research must have attracted it to this region when local spacetime began to fail. And if our readings are correct, it contains one of our missing units." Marcus studied his sensor readings. The station appears to be experiencing severe temporal drift. Different sections are moving through time at different rates. Some areas might have experienced only minutes since their displacement, while others. "We have to go in," Sarah said. "If there's a chance anyone survived in there, we can't just leave them." "The risk is significant," the Sentinel warned. "Our quantum field can provide limited protection, but any mistake could trap us in the station's temporal distortions permanently." Sarah checked their ship's systems. The Wayfarer had taken a beating during their escape through the temporal barrier, and every jump between fragments of reality put further strain on its aging hull. But they were running out of options. "How long until the barrier collapse reaches populated systems?" she asked. At current degradation rates, less than 48 hours, Marcus replied. We're already seeing reports of temporal anomalies in the outer colonies. Panic is spreading. Sarah made her decision. We go in. Marcus, can you modify the Sentinel's quantum field to cover our environmental suits? We'll need to board the station. The docking procedure was a nightmare of precise calculations and split-second timing. Different parts of the station moved through time at different rates, meaning a docking port might be perfectly aligned one moment and centuries old the next. Only the Sentinel's guidance allowed them to find a stable point of entry. The station's corridors were a haunting mix of pristine sections and areas that had aged centuries in moments. In some places, they found coffee cups still steaming on desks, while adjacent rooms were filled with centuries of accumulated dust. The temporal effects are intensifying, Marcus reported, checking his modified quantum scanner. We need to move quickly. They found the first survivor in what had once been the main research lab. Dr. Elena Zhang, one of the station's leading quantum physicists, was frozen in mid-keystroke, experiencing time at such a slow rate that she appeared completely motionless. Can we help her? Sarah asked. If we can stabilize this region of space-time, yes, the Sentinel replied. But first, we must locate our missing unit. It is near, and its presence is affecting the local temporal field. They found it in a heavily shielded containment chamber, another Sentinel unit, its surface patterns pulsing with barely contained energy. But unlike their Sentinel, this one seemed damaged, its quantum field fluctuating wildly. The unit is malfunctioning, their Sentinel announced. The station's scientists must have attempted to study it, not understanding its true purpose. Their experiments damaged its containment protocols. That's what caused all this. Sarah gestured at the temporal chaos around them. One damaged unit. Our technology was never meant to be separated for so long. The quantum network that would have stabilized us was never completed. Without it, damage to any unit can have cascading effects. Marcus approached the damaged unit carefully, his scanner extended. The temporal distortions are emanating from it in waves. If we can't stabilize it, this whole region could collapse into a quantum singularity. We can transfer its data to our unit, the Sentinel said, but the process will be dangerous. The temporal energy must go somewhere. Sarah looked at the frozen form of Dr. Zhang, then at the dozens of other offices and labs they'd passed, each containing scientists trapped in their own temporal bubbles. These people dedicated their lives to understanding the universe. We can't just leave them here. There might be a way, Marcus said suddenly, his eyes lighting up with the kind of inspiration that only came from desperate circumstances. The station's quantum research, they were studying temporal mechanics. If we can link their experimental equipment to both Sentinel units, we could use the excess temporal energy to restore normal time flow to the station. The Sentinel finished, catching his meaning. But the calculations would have to be perfect. Any error could accelerate the barrier collapse exponentially. Good thing we've got humanity's best quantum physicist and an ancient alien supercomputer on our team, Sarah said. What do you need me to do? The next hour was a blur of desperate activity. While Marcus and the Sentinel worked to modify the station's equipment, Sarah raced through the temporally shifting corridors, gathering crucial components and marking the locations of surviving crew members. The damaged unit's containment field was failing by the time they were ready. Temporal distortions rippled through the station with increasing frequency, forcing them to dodge pockets of accelerated time that could age them to dust in seconds. The network is ready, Marcus announced, his voice tense. But someone needs to manually activate the transfer sequence from the primary control room. The temporal shielding will protect that area, but whoever goes in, they'll be cut off from the rest of us during the process. Sarah knew what she had to do. How long? 3 minutes subjective time. But Sarah, if anything goes wrong, then it won't matter anyway. She managed to smile. Just make sure you get these people home. The primary control room was eerily quiet, the temporal effects temporarily held at bay by the station's shielding. Sarah watched through the reinforced windows as Marcus and the Sentinel made their final preparations. The damaged unit glowed brighter, its temporal energy building to critical levels. Transfer sequence initiating. The Sentinel's voice echoed in her mind. Sarah Chen, it has been an honor to witness human ingenuity firsthand. Sarah's fingers flew across the control panel, following the sequence they had planned. Around her, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. The transfer, when it came, was both beautiful and terrifying. A wave of temporal energy exploded from the damaged unit, but instead of destroying the station, it was caught and channeled through the modified research equipment. Sarah watched in amazement as time began to flow backward and forward around her, the station's trapped crew members returning to normal temporal synchronization. Dr. Zhang was the first to fully awaken, her expression changing from confusion to wonder as she took in the impossible scene before her. Others followed, centuries of frozen time unwinding as the temporal distortions were neutralized. When it was over, when the last of the temporal energy had been safely contained, Sarah slumped in her chair, exhausted but triumphant. They had done it, saved hundreds of lives and recovered crucial data needed to stabilize the universe. Transfer complete, the Sentinel announced, its voice stronger now that it had integrated the other unit's knowledge. We now possess all necessary data to complete the quantum stabilization network, but we must hurry. The barrier continues to degrade across the galaxy. Sarah looked at the recovering scientists, seeing the same determination in their eyes that she felt in her heart. I don't think that will be a problem, she said. How many brilliant quantum physicists does it take to save the universe? Dr. Zhang stepped forward, her eyes bright with understanding and purpose. Just enough, she said, and you found them. As they began their work, combining ancient wisdom with human innovation, Sarah thought about how far they'd come. From a discredited archaeologist to humanity's last hope, from scavenging ruins to saving reality itself. The universe might be falling apart, but humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to build something new from the pieces. The Sentinel had been right. Sometimes the most primitive solution was the most innovative one. And as humans and ancient technology worked together to rewrite the laws of physics, Sarah knew that whatever came next, humanity would face it with the same determination and creativity that had brought them to this moment. The universe was about to learn what happened when human ingenuity met ancient wisdom, and the lesson would reshape reality itself.